What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Timeout with SCO. I'm here with special guest Coach Furtado. Coach Furtado is from Northern California. He graduated from the University of Oregon and has started his own youth program called BTG, which stands for Beyond the Game. He has 6 years of coaching experience, and he is currently a head coach at Pacifica Christian for the JV and an assistant for the varsity team. So thank you so much for joining me today, Coach.
Hey, it's fun to be on this side of a podcast, so I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, now all the pressure's on me.
Right, exactly. I just get
You
to
just get to answer the questions and look good.
There we go.
Well, thank you again for coming today. I wanted you to talk about, introduce yourself a little bit more, kind of how you started, getting into this game and what's kind of led you to being passionate about wanting to run your own business and, get this thing up and going.
Cool. I mean, it's a full circle moment for me because as I was driving here, like when my fiance and I moved here from Oregon, we lived in downtown and I was working at Emick Hebrew Academy through Royal Basketball School in the Valley. So I would drive this road every single day. So it's a full circle moment to come here and be here for this podcast and talk about basketball because I actually was remembering like a podcast episode that I was listening to called the Hardwood Hustle podcast through PGC basketball. And I remember TJ Rosine talking about how, and I was coaching like 4 to 6 year olds at the time, like super young. And he was just talking about how important it is just be where your feet are. I think as I'm still a young coach, I'm only 27 years old. I have my entire life ahead of me, but I feel like I have a lot of experience now. And at that time, he was just talking about how it's important to be where your feet are and just coach the kids that are in front of you. Like, don't always focus on coaching elite kids or Division I or whoever. Like, whoever is in front of you, give your best effort and your energy. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've taken, and we can kind of dive into a little bit more of how I built BTG in LA and like some of my experience before BTG. But that's just a good place that we could start.
Yeah, I love that. Now, for you specifically, did you start with coaching first? And then from there, what led you into being like, hey, I want to do more?
I love that. Yeah, actually, I didn't start with coaching. So I went to University of Oregon. My high school playing career, like I am a better coach than I am a player. Let's say that. I wasn't the best player. I was cut from my varsity team my junior year. I played JV my junior year, where I was from was not like heard of at all. Like here, it's like pretty normal, at least in the public school scene, to be a junior on JV. But it wasn't. And so I worked my butt off just to make the team my senior year. And I rode the bench, but I led the team in high fives. Like I was a cheerleader or whatever. But that work ethic is kind of what like made me fall in love with the game of basketball. Is like made me fall in love with the process of it, not even necessarily the results. Like I was just happy to be on the team. And so I learned a lot there just from that experience. And so when I came here in August of 2021, like I was doing something else. Like I was trying to build basically a startup for undergrads to basically transition into life after college because I was having a hard time with it. I was like, I want to start something, and it was a terrible idea. Whatever. It failed, right? It failed. And so long story short, how I actually started coaching was I took a coaching class at the University of Oregon. Shout out Dave Rubino, who got a wedding invite. I was at the Boys and Girls Club, and so he helped me like walk me through how to start and basically run a basketball class, like first and second graders. And so I remember I was running this class. He's taught me, how do you keep kids disciplined? Like if they're hitting each other, he would like help me like with those little things when you're starting out. And so I remember my boss at the time, Alyssa, came in and they were playing, and I remember she was like looking like inquisitively, and she's just like, wow, they're playing well. They're like sharing the basketball, because they had some kids that all they want to do every time they touch the ball, they want to shoot, right? So I had to work with them, and something about the game, like I was just shooting today, and I was just thinking about why I love the game so much is just how connected the ball can make a team, if that makes sense. It's like such a beautiful sport where like I really think it's the ultimate team sport, because like there are some other great team sports, like sure, like football. I feel like it's most similar probably to soccer or football, just in the way that they share the ball. So I'm kind of, long story short, I started there at the Boys and Girls Club, and I come from a youth development background.
So something that you mentioned in this very early part of what you were saying was you led the team in high fives
Yeah.
as a junior, and it reminded me when I went to school, my dissertation for my master's program, my like big topic was like, what is the impact of uh, motivation on player performance, and it just kind of made me think about that because it's a huge part of performance. You look at Steve Nash, like he
Yep.
was somebody that
Yep.
was, really positive touch sort of guy.
Yep.
And, you see those clips on social media where he's always high-fiving everybody and
Yep.
everybody's counting. And so I'll say like kudos to you for learning that at an early age because that's something I'm sure that you implement in your business to some
Oh, for
level,
sure.
whether it's with coaches or even, players that you're working with. But that takes me to kind of my next question for you, which is your approach. We've talked about that a little bit kind
Yeah.
of prior to cameras being on. Tell me more about your approach, why you really believe in this approach, and how it's helped you develop kids.
Absolutely. So I named it Beyond the Game Basketball to prepare young people to be successful beyond the game of basketball, right? At the end of the day, most of the people that we train and we coach will not play collegiately. And if they do play collegiately, will probably not play professionally. And even if they do, they still hang their shoes up, right? Michael Jordan, you can put the names like LeBron's going to have to hang it up at some point. I don't know when it will be. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be 60, right? But at some point, everyone hangs up their shoes. So how can I teach young people how to be successful in life beyond the game of basketball and use the game of basketball, right? Like teaching commitment. So we have 4 leadership principles. Commitment is number 1. Like that's a really big thing to me. It's like, can you do what you say and follow through? Curiosity. So we want to build like lifelong learners. And so when we start to talk a little bit more basketball, X's and O's, like I can kind of bring that in. Talking about communication, that's a big one. Like that's like one of our big pillars and things that we're working with our athletes. Like, are you running late? Are you going to be able to communicate with me? Can you communicate with us early and often? Like that's something I talk to them about too. It's like, don't tell me you're running late 2 minutes before practice. That's unacceptable, right? How can I prepare them to communicate with their professors and their boss and their supervisor once they finish basketball? And then last is connection. How well can you connect with other people? In my opinion, like this is one of the most important skills now post-COVID, as these kids are just so in touch with technology. How can you interact with humans? So that's like our like overarching approach, and I can dive deeper into the basketball side too.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about constraint-led approach, which I know is something that you implement a lot more so on the court. For those that don't know, can you talk more about what the constraint-led approach is, how you kind of came to learn about it, and why you thought that may be the best approach on court to take with your athletes?
Absolutely. So my kind of experience allows me to not have an ego because I wasn't necessarily a very good basketball player. So everything to me is like a sponge. So I just try and be a sponge. And so as we were talking about before this, like talking about Tyler Leclerc, he's the one that kind of got me into the small side of games. Then I found Cole. But someone who's been a really big inspiration to me is Alex Sarama, the player development coach for the Cavs now. And so he's the founder of Transforming Basketball. And I found him through a podcast guest, Jeff Schmidt, who is the founder of Schmidt Performance out in Colorado, who just did something with our mutual friend Carrie. So it's small world. So constraint-led approach really it's all about basically building small problems in the game and then applying constraints. So there's a games-led approach, which is different from the constraint-led approach, which is what I think a lot of coaches get confused with. They think, oh, they're just this trainer, this coach is letting him play games the entire time. It's like we're using constraints to basically design a learning environment so they can get attuned with that learning environment. So it just made sense to me why I kind of came to it. And I just like, you can only really get great at something if you like have that experience. And then how do we use that experience to help kids learn from it? So we'll go from there.
Was that the approach that you always used when training, or did you start with a different approach or just general sort of training and realize, hey, maybe like I need something else or something different?
That's a good question. I started training how I was trained, or like I still remember like when I was a kid, I had this menu of workouts and I would do like the same thing every single week. And like consistency is the reason I like got skilled, but I feel like I never really fully translated to the game. So I started training like that. And then when I was watching Tyler actually inspired my learning because he was just like, if you want to make money in this industry as a trainer, you have to improve your value. And the only way you improve your value is if you improve your knowledge. So that's just something that stuck with me and I just wanted to keep learning and growing. So now a lot of what I use are evidence-based ideas. So ideas that have been like researched by academics. Like I don't always fully go through the actual academic papers, but I like going through people like Cole and Alex who have gone through the academic papers. And then I just take stuff from them as well. I just want everything to be like, my approach is how can I maximize the experience for the players?
So let me ask you this. Obviously, I train as well,
Yeah,
and everybody's approach is different.
right.
For you specifically, do you come into your sessions with your workout already prepared?
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
like the specific drill, or do you come in with general ideas of, hey, these are the things that, these players need to focus on, and you're kind of seeing how they respond to it and changing or adjusting?
Both. The answer is both. I try to build more so like skills that I want to like focus on, and then I'll build the drills around it. So one of the things that I've been trying to improve on is actually like kind of going with the flow. So like really, especially as a trainer, so I'll put the trainer hat on. Every kid needs a different drill, right? So when I'm doing like small groups, like if I have a player who's super right hand dominant, very physical, I'll be like, look, you can only score with your left, right, in this one-on-one game or whatever it is. But if I have one player, right, we'll just make it simple. And here's a lefty, I'll flip it and they have to go with their right. So it's both. Like I want to prepare the outcomes that I want, like the skills, like the tangible takeaways, and then I'll build the drills around that.
I love that. One of the biggest areas I think for me specifically that I've grown in is I'm a very like prepared and
Yeah.
planned person.
Yeah.
So when I used to run workouts, I used to have these specific drills in mind
The entire way.
of what I
Yeah.
wanted to do, right? So I'd follow this workout plan to the T, and sometimes it would be great, and there were other times where you can tell, okay, a player needs something else.
Right.
And I think the biggest growth that I've experienced and seen is sort of going with the flow, right? Having
Yeah.
a general list of, hey, these are the things that are important for this player or are a philosophy that I have as a coach that's really important.
Yeah.
But if this drill isn't working, or maybe I know this about this player, so this would be a better drill for them, being able to adjust on the fly, make, sort of constraints and different things without, I think that's where like true coaching is.
Yes.
So I love that you said that is something that you've sort of tried to implement as well now into your coaching.
Yeah, it's the art of coaching, right? And it's not a full science because we're also working, at least I work with youth athletes. And so youth athletes are still learning how to be human, right? They show up, and especially teenage boys, sometimes they're high, they're like on top of the clouds, and then sometimes they're really low. And we have to like, it's a combination of like meeting them where they're at, like sometimes when they're low, like lifting them up. And then obviously sometimes if they're too high, we got to bring them down. And so it's that constant art. One of the things that I've been learning about is a zone of optimal improvement. So like whenever we're doing, if they're having 100% success, like it's too much success. Like I need them to fail more in training. And I think that's something I see you talk about a lot is training is ugly. Training is challenging. Training should not be pretty. So now, no matter what kind of training methods you choosing training methods that are challenging for your athletes and that transfer to skills in the game. They may not even be like a direct thing that happens in a game, but just to, be able to bump with your arm, like in certain angles, right? There are certain specifics that are trainable, and as long as you're challenging your athletes, that's what's most important in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and I hate to put you on the spot, but what's your preference, training or coaching? And
Great
how
question.
has one helped the other?
Oh, it helps immensely. I am a coach. Like I am a team coach. I love building. Like my gift from the universe, spiritual, is like being able to navigate and manage and motivate teams. So like I prefer, if I'm doing training, I want it to be group training so I can teach the game. I'm not the best at details, which I think leads me to being a better coach and like hiring assistant coach or coaches who are really good with the X's and O's, or like, more of a player development approach like you or Coach Dave, who are just understand those little like minute things. I'm just like, I don't know, figure it out, like make a quicker decision versus like someone like yourself probably would be able to break it down in a better way than I would.
Sure. It's interesting because I'm like completely opposite.
Yeah.
I'm so nitpicky on like the
Right.
details of things,
Right.
and even within like my own coaching. And I think there's a healthy balance.
Yeah,
You
for
know, you
sure.
have to have a little bit of both, but I think knowing what your strengths are and then also hiring a staff that, helps you and complements you is half the battle.
Thousand
And
percent.
that kind of takes me to my next question for you, which is I know that now we've talked about it a little bit off
Yeah.
camera. You have 7 teams that you're running and that are playing. What do you look for when you are bringing on coaches to sort of help you?
Great question. And I know that you know the answer, but for those that are listening, the two biggest things, right, outside of obviously knowing basketball, right, that's like the non negotiable, like you have to understand basketball, is you have to care about the human being. That's like non negotiable, and you have to be curious and you have to be open to learning. Those are two of our non negotiable standards. The reason why is we coach the athlete or the human first before the athlete. And then number two, we have to put our egos aside and be willing to be coached and learn what's most effective for this present day athlete. Not for you back when you played, but this present day athlete.
Now I'm going to flip, I guess, to the athlete side.
Mhm.
When you're looking to have kids join your program, other than the 4 sort of principles that you mentioned earlier,
Right.
is there a specific skill level that you're looking for? What do you think is most important on court skill for the players that are part of your program to possess?
Yeah. So if I was building let's say like I'm a college coach and I'm running this program, like right now it's a little bit more development focused, but what we really want our outcome and for our players to leave our program with, we want them to become great leaders. So those that are coming into our program, they want to be a leader. They want to be pushed. They want to be challenged. They don't want to just pick up the ball and play. So they want something more than just basketball. And I think as far as skill wise on the court, they're gritty. They're tough. They play defense. Right now, we are learning how to do that. We are struggling. We're getting our butt kicked a little bit, and we have a high standard for it. So now we're getting more kids into the program where like at first we were kind of like 6'7". So like the kids there wasn't as much motivation to, play defense. Oh, well, I'm gonna get play time anyways. But now we're at 8 teams that are 8 and 9. If you're not playing defense, you are not going to be playing. Other thing is like efficient scorers or like people that know their role. Like, are you a shooter? Are you someone that can attack and get downhill? Like, I want someone who understands what they're great at and doubles down on it, right? Like I think great teams, right? If you watch any great basketball team, whether it's Florida or now we're about to go into the playoffs, are you elite at getting to the rim, right? Because I think sometimes that gets forgotten, right? Because we're in such an era of shooting threes, which I'm very pro. Like I think everyone needs to be able to knock down shots to play in this current generation of basketball, but elite at getting to the rim, right? good enough at shooting threes, and then making sure you don't turn the basketball over. Like, take care of the basketball. I'd say those are my three things offensively that we really try and teach. And then obviously defensive principles, pressuring the basketball, make sure you're rotating and you're active and engaged. I just had a film session with my 15U guys. There's so many of them are standing up on defense. So I'm like, this is unacceptable. What do you think is more efficient to get to your help side, when you're standing or when you're like sitting low, athletic, and engaged? And like, engaged. So those are just a few things.
One of the buzzwords that you mentioned was development.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially right now with the climate of basketball, especially AAU, the thing that most programs value is winning.
Yep.
So for you, when did you decide that development was more important for your program? And how has that led everything you do?
It's been a pillar of the program. Like, when I started at Venice, and I was at Venice, and so I had cut a couple of kids, and so my first 3 to 5 kids were kids that I personally cut from the team that just wanted to get better. And I have one kid in particular, I won't use his name because I don't know if I can use it, but God, he's such a great kid, and now he's a junior going into be a senior year, and he's not in the top 9 rotation, but he's one of those next man up guys. And I'm really excited for him this summer, that he's still a part of my program, and that, this summer, he's going to continue to get better and put himself in a position that when there's someone hurt on Venice next year, he will have an opportunity to contribute. So that's how I don't even remember what the initial question was.
The initial question was how, within your program, did you decide that you were going to prioritize development essentially over winning?
Yes. So I went 0-8 this past weekend, and I don't know if you saw, I talked about it, but I was happy about it because I put those 2 teams that went 0-4 up a division. So it's not like we were playing at our level. I put them up a level. And so the only way to learn and grow in life is to fail. So it's an art, right? I don't want to only have my kids fail and kill their confidence and smash it and then have them hate basketball, but I also want to challenge them and provide them with that adversity, because I feel like adversity, and that's my biggest challenge with this generation of parents, and I'm not a parent, is it seems like, this is from the outsider's perspective, is that we shield our kids from failure too often. And I think failure is the reason I am having this conversation with you right now. I failed to make the basketball team my junior year, and I didn't let that failure determine the rest of my basketball journey. So I think there's a lot more life lessons that we can learn through development, a development focus. At the end of the day, we're going to be winning, not necessarily tournaments, but we're going to be a lot more competitive in July. Even though, and we have a development focus, we still want to be competitive. And I think that sometimes people think they're mutually exclusive, but I think it's an and.
You mentioned parents, so I'm going to bring parents up because that's a huge part of what you deal with as a coach, what you deal with, as a director, as a trainer, all of the above. Obviously, I've had my fair share of getting to connect with parents. How do you get the parents on board with the philosophy of hey, we're probably going to lose a lot of games to start, but, that's not our goal?
Yeah, I think twofold. Number one, I have had a phone call with every single, at least parent, not both parents, but at least one of the parents that are in the program. There may be 1 or 2 that I haven't. I know all the parents' names, so that's number one. I would say if you're starting a program, I'm sure some people that are listening to this podcast have aspirations to start their own training program or AAU program, whatever it is, you have to get to know the parents. When I'm working with my coaches now and I'm helping them get one-on-one private coaching jobs, I'm you have to talk to the parent on the phone before you even start, with that, training them one-on-one, whatever it is, because you want to build a relationship with them. Because if you build a relationship with them and they understand that you have their kid's best interest you have their kid's best interest, you're going to get buy-in sooner. we had an orientation and we talked about that. I also brought in a guest speaker, Kirsten Jones, who's the author of Raising Empowered Athletes. She does a lot of speaking in this area. And so basically that was like the second week of our program. So I brought in an expert pretty much to say the same thing that I'm saying. But she's the expert, right? And she's a parent. So I try and bring people in that are parents that can relate and have our same mission and philosophy, because I do recognize I'm not a parent, so I will not ever fully be able to understand until I am a parent what that's like.
Yeah, I really appreciate that response because I think that that's the hardest part a lot of times of what we do is
Mhm.
getting the parent on board. And I think you mentioned like a really good way is like have conversations with them, let
Right.
them know in advance what they can expect. And I think a lot of times that communication can be missing.
Yeah.
And so parents come in or players come in and they don't have that, they don't know what to expect.
Right.
And so they're just sort of coming in to this a new environment and they're kind of trying to figure out where do I fit and what does that look like and all of those other things. So I really appreciate that answer. It's something that I do with anybody that trains with me. I'm not coaching currently, but anybody that trains with me, like we have a conversation in advance of, hey, what are your expectations? Hey, these are mine. Um, you know, this is
Yeah.
what I want for your kid, or this is where I see that they can improve, so on and so forth. But I think that open communication is everything.
Absolutely. And I think building on that, like parents are the most important part of the puzzle a lot of times. So getting them on the same page is paramount if you really want to maximize that kid's future, because at the end of the day, it's the parents are having that conversation in the car, like whatever it is. So I try and put out a ton of content for them too, where I'm like giving them information that I'm receiving and learning. So that way, like I'm helping prepare them as well, because they're just doing their best that they can or how they know. And I've actually been really fortunate. I really haven't had too many. Most of the parents in my program are amazing, and I have no issues with them at all.
You're lucky.
I'm lucky. Knocking on some wood.
Yeah, you're really lucky. Okay, so talk more now about BTG and what do you see for BTG's future,
Yeah,
short term and long term?
love it. I mean, that's it's a great question. It's one I'm actually currently thinking about, because this is something that I had visioned, like having 7 teams. I think ideal world. And one thing that I've talked about is doing like a BTG LA, and wherever I move, it ends up being whether it's BTG Portland or Austin, and growing out and expanding that way. I want to be a part of growing the women's game. And so like I want to build out the girls program and the middle school program. Like I'm pretty happy with where the high school is. I have 5 boys high school teams. I can maybe add one 16U team, but like that to me seems like the right fit. Like I don't want kids to come in the gym and feel like a number ever. I always want them to know who their coaches' names, have their coaches know their names, and know that they really are cared for. And I feel like when there are so many athletes in the gym, it's hard. It's just challenging, and that's not the business model I want to have. So like ideal age would be like 12U through 17U, 2 teams on the boys and the girls side.
Cool, really cool. And as far as for you, shoot, lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Um, for you, one of the things that I noticed that is kind of different for your program is you also incorporate a lot of strength and conditioning.
Mhm.
Is that something that you run? Is that something that you collaborate with somebody else on? And at what point in time did you add that to your training, your program in general?
So I always knew that we wanted to have like the best overall, or the most, I won't say best because best is super subjective, the most holistic development program like for like club. So we watch film, we lift weights like you mentioned. Obviously we have our innovative CLA basketball training in addition to traditional basketball practice, which kind of ties in. Now going to the strength and conditioning part, like when we started it, I was just doing it, just picking up stuff and I had got my certification in youth exercise science, which is now where I'm like really lucky where my fiance is actually the athlete in the relationship. She's a Division I All-American athlete at University of Oregon. And so she was a master's student at USC for cinema studies. That's why we moved down here. And then, she graduated right at the time of the strike, worked somewhere for a year, didn't really work out. And she's just a great mentor. So I was like, look, like, would love to have you as our strength coach. So she got her youth exercise specialist certification. And so now she does it as well. And so she brings in like her gymnastics kind of focus, which is really important because I'm sure as you work with a lot of athletes, like they're lacking core strength, like stability, like they're playing less sports. So their like movement library is so diminished. So I'm like really excited for her to like open up that movement library for our athletes.
I love that. My background was also in exercise science,
Nice.
and I've got, when I first started, this is funny. I went to school, I got my bachelor's in exercise science,
Hmm.
and I was set on going to PT school.
Okay.
And about 1 month from the start of school, I decided that the PT route wasn't for me.
Okay.
I was working this coaching job in Kentucky where I finished my college,
Yeah.
and I had stayed there for a year, took a gap year. I was coaching a middle school team and assisting on the varsity side, as well as doing PT stuff. And I just realized, hey, like coaching was something that I enjoyed way more than
Yeah.
PT. And so, I got my NASM CPT, my
Yep.
CSCS, the performance training specialization that I think that you're mentioning.
Yep.
And I think there's so much value in that. The other component that I think is interesting to note that you have within your program is a girls and boys side.
Yeah.
Talk about the differences
Mhm.
that you've noticed in coaching the girls versus the boys. And if you want to mention your preference, you can, but I won't hold you to it if you don't want to.
No, I'll share my preference, and I tell the boys all the time I prefer coaching girls. They have no ego. They are incredibly coachable. Like the girls that are in our program right now are still developing. They didn't get, and then I didn't, I'm now just coming into this world and understanding like there's not as many programs for young girls, like from whatever 8U to 14U as there are boys. And so you go to all these tournaments and it's unfortunate because there's not really a level for my girls to compete at because we're still developing. They're getting so much better every single week, which is great. And at the same time, like when we're in these tournaments, there's only 4 and 5 girls high school teams total. Whereas guys wise, you got 15 through 17, you have at least 4 to 6 teams per division. So, talking about coaching both of them, like ideal world would be like eventually it's the same number of boys and girls that play the game of basketball all the way through high school. Now, kind of coming back to where we are, it's my second year doing girls. We have a girls team, and so that's like going to be our area of growth. And I think the biggest difference in coaching them is like for high school boys, I have to like bring their confidence like down, and for high school girls, I have to bring it up. And I think there's just a lot of too cool, at least for my younger high school guys are just like too cool. And then so like my girls on that side is like take the ball to the rim. Like a lot of times it's settling for jumpers that we shouldn't be, or like turning down shots we should be taking. Whereas the guys they'll just put up bad shot after bad shot until you teach them, right? So I think that's the biggest difference. I enjoy coaching both. I love coaching all kids.
Sure.
Like I had mentioned before the podcast started, though, like my next step would be girls varsity, though.
That's interesting. I started on the girl side, just sort of by like just kind of how it happened.
Right.
And ever since I moved back, I had mainly boys clients.
Right.
And within the last couple years, I've noticed a shift. I've started to get some more girls on board. I think the few things that I noticed difference wise about girls, One is I do think that there aren't as many opportunities
Right.
for them to develop.
Yes.
So I've noticed, like, and granted, training wasn't really a thing when I played,
Right.
but I was skilled enough to at least have some decent opportunities that I kind of created just through, like, my dad really sort of trained me and helped me
Right.
grow. But I noticed that, for one, there's not a lot of opportunities, and there's not a lot of programs that are really teaching girls. I
Mhm.
feel like the way that I've noticed people train or coach girls seem to be different than the way that guys are coached. I don't know if it's not like necessarily the accountability factor, but I think it's like how we're teaching the different skills. Is something I've noticed. And the other thing is I feel like girls can be so nice sometimes.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's okay to be
Compete.
the best player in the
Yes.
gym and want that.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing, like, in my sessions all the time with girls, is like, let's compete, let's get
Yeah.
after it. They're so nice and they don't want to hurt each other, and
Yep.
they don't want to be the person that is the alpha and stands out too much.
Mhm.
But I think that for guys, it's like, all right, guys, let's bring it in.
Right.
You're always
Right.
constantly having to reel it back. So to your point, I've
Yes.
experienced that as well.
Yeah, no, the too nice part is actually a really good point. Like, I'm like, compete, ladies. Like, you're not friends on the court. You're not friend. Definitely not with the other team. So that's a really good point.
So coming back to you, where do you see yourself as far as, the next 10 years? Obviously, you mentioned you want to expand BTG and potentially have an LA base, and, wherever you would go, a base there as well.
Yeah,
Outside of that, like, what do you see for yourself?
that's a great question. And it's one I'm actually like in this process. I was pretty much had my head down since January started and like getting the 7 teams off the ground. Like, now that I have a little bit of breathing room, we're operating, I've kind of got the opportunity to like reflect and think again. And that's something that's really important to me. So, like, where I really like see myself going, I don't really know. I'm like getting to that point in my life where I'm like, I don't want to be like the Katy Perry song and the plastic bag floating through the wind, right? I'm not trying to be like that. Like, I still have intentions of where I want to go. I'm a little bit more open to some of the opportunities that come. Like, if an opportunity comes to coach higher level basketball of collegiately or professionally, like, I would be open to that. I think what's most important to me is to be in an environment, right? If I'm going to go work, like I would want to work for like a UCLA women's basketball, because Coach Corey Close is known as one of the best like leaders. So like, if I was going to go, and leave BTG, it would be to be under a program that shares similar values to me. So I know like we had talked about like a BTG LA and BTG somewhere else. I also could see myself like, like my kids might be watching, but like selling it and like just moving on and like just doing something else. In terms of what I always want to do is I always want to make an impact wherever I go. And I feel like the universe gave me the skills to impact young people. That's why I have never really thought about professional basketball in any department, because I just like working with youth. Like, I just feel like that's my calling. So something in youth, I could see myself coaching. Eventually I'll coach varsity basketball. Like, I love coaching. Like, I was listening to Coach Cav's pod on the way here, and everything that he was saying, like, I was just like nodding my head, even though like he probably comes from a different generation of coaching than I do, but so much of what he said just resonated with me. And like, he was talking about the relationships of it. Like, I could never trade that in for anything.
Yeah, the relationships are super meaningful. I think basketball is always going to be the tool,
Yeah.
but why you keep showing up is because of the connections that you build and
Yeah.
the relationships that you acquire over time. And I guess that leads me to asking, if I was a player or a parent, what separates your program? Other than some of the things that we've already mentioned, what separates your program, and why should I choose BTG to come play for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's been fun kind of being the salesperson and being the recruiter, because that's what I felt like this February when I was getting on the phone with all these parents and like trying to be like, yo, over here, come over here. I think the holistic approach is obviously one of them. Our track record, I know we're relatively new, but some of the kids that have gone all in on our program, like not only have improved their basketball skills, have dramatically improved their like communication skills. I have a girl who's a part of our program who's not even the most skilled, but she received $88,000 from the University of San Francisco, and they cited in the first paragraph that being a part of the Beyond the Game team is the primary reason that she received that scholarship.
It's amazing.
And that's just an academic scholarship. That's not even, an athletic scholarship. So, like, we really prepare people for life beyond the game. So, like, if you're a kid who, you want to play at the next level, like we do have kids we have 2 college prep teams that we're going to put in front of scouts. Like, if we can help you play basketball for longer, let's squeeze every last bit of basketball out. But if not, let's prepare you to be the best. Like I have this one kid who's a very talented basketball player. He just told me the other day he's interested in software. Well, one of my coaches is a software engineer, so I like connected them on that. And that way, like just know that, I guess, if you're coming into the program, like we really care about who you are as a human being.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. One of the things that I think was really cool, and I haven't even mentioned this to you, but that I saw you doing was supporting people during the fires. And I remember seeing you had an open gym, you were collecting donations, you were dropping things off. And I think that's like a true testament to, what BTG is, what you stand for, the sorts of and the types of people that you're wanting to represent your program and be around. And there aren't a lot of programs that I think really they say that they keep that first, but you don't oftentimes see that actually happening. So that's something I think that is really neat, about BTG and just about what you're doing.
I appreciate that. And that kind of goes to the talking point you're talking about with Coach Cab about integrity. You guys were talking about integrity of like working hard in your drills or whatever it is, right? And then that's to translate later on in life, right? To have integrity as a person. Like I recognize that like all my athletes, my parents, even my coaches, they look up everything I do is like not under I'm not a professional athlete, so I'm not scrutinized or anything, but like I'm a role model, right? Every decision I make and every interaction I have is a role model. So like sometimes am I always the best? And the way I treat the refs, probably not. Sorry for the referees that are listening. I always apologize before they play me. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like you're going to hear it from me. But like I also know you're human. So just like really and I'll share, this is a super random story and then we can kind of get back. But I think one of the most underrated things is following through and keeping your word. And I'll never forget. It was my freshman year of high school. It's my first year playing fantasy football with my dad's high school buddies. And they were all talking about, oh, next year we're going to do draft on a boat on a lake. And I was telling my dad after, I was like, that sounds awesome, Dad, And he's just like, that's just guys talking. And like, maybe it's just because I'm super naive. Like I never thought people could talk about something and not actually go do it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I think the last thing that I think is coming up for me is if you had to give advice to somebody that was interested in doing what you do, what would that advice be?
Have a purpose, because even though they're like this is like the best job in the world, there are going to be days that you don't want to show up. And I feel like that purpose has got me through, not necessarily that days have been super challenging, but like in February when I had literally nothing in my bank account because I wasn't training at the time, I was preparing only for club basketball. Like I had to understand that there was a greater purpose that I was going to, like eventually obviously the sales came in and I'm fine now, right? But that there's going to be times in this business where you are on your own and you are like, oh no, like I don't really know like where my next dollar is going to come from. And so what I actually say and I tell people is like, my thing that helped me a lot to like support myself was be a substitute teacher. You can make like $175 to $250 a day, from 8 a.m. to 3, right? And then train after. You can train on the weekends, and it's flexible. So if you want to take an interview, you don't have to substitute that day. That's what really helped me here in LA the first 2 years, is like I subbed 2 to 4 days a week. And then I would like pick up the kids after at Venice High School. I'd go pick them up and take them to a park. So like, if you really want to do it, you can find and make a way. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. Is it still easy? Some days are better than others, but no, answer is not. It's not. But is it worth it? And does it bring me purpose every day? Yes.
I love that you mentioned that, because especially like for me, I'm only on the training side right now.
Yeah.
And during the year, it's so slow, right? You're looking around like, anybody need training? You
Right.
know? And when it's the off season, you're like, I don't have enough time. Like
Right.
I've got way too many people to train.
Right.
And I think in this job, specifically on the training side, it's so seasonal,
Mhm.
and you have to find ways to make money
Yeah.
and grow.
Yeah.
And so I love that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of times we think about training as, wow, we can make all of this money. And that's true to some extent, but we aren't always prepared for the other challenges that we have to face along the
Mhm.
way. And being able to sort of navigate those, find different routes and paths, and sometimes do things that we don't necessarily want to do,
Yes.
I think is literally what being an entrepreneur or a business person is. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and then continuing on with that, it's like having the self-discipline to, make sure you're executing and doing things every single day. Like, I think there's so much information out there. That can be like a challenge. And so like I would just like get up and work from 7 to 7 every single day. And just understand that like a lot of it was on me, and now I'm in this transition phase where I'm like in delegating. We were kind of talking about it before, and this is kind of my next chapter of learning how to be a better leader, a better delegator, like a clearer communicator. So like at the same time, my additional advice would be never stop learning. I feel like the days when I think I'm like, a great coach or whatever, like are the days I have the worst practices or like whatever. It's like I believe in myself. Like I know I am a great coach, but as soon as I you have the ego talking, those are the days where I don't learn as much as I should.
Yeah. I'm going to now put you on the spot. I know that you have your own podcast, so I'm now going to give you an opportunity to ask me a question. Can be any question that you want.
Cool. What inspired you to want to start a podcast on top of, especially now we're in the off season, like we're training, like what made you want to add to your plate? Because I know your plate's already pretty full.
Yeah, I love that question. For me, one of the biggest pieces of information that I've received over the years is that people only know me on the court. And I think that's great. But I think the other thing that people want to see is more of me as a human off the court. And it's been something that I've been interested in doing, but maybe haven't had the confidence to do it, to be in front of a camera, to tell people about yourself, to have conversations with other people. And it kind of felt like one of those moments where you either do it
Right.
or you don't.
Right.
And I think for me, whenever those situations or those challenges happen, I think I always try to push myself. Even if it doesn't work out the way that I wanted to, I always try to push myself to at least try.
Yep.
And so for me, the biggest reason that I wanted to start a podcast was to get to connect with people more, to get to have guests like you on that can share knowledge and help people learn and grow, but also as an opportunity for people to get to see me, to get to see my voice, to get to hear me, to get to watch me speak. And I think all of that stuff is super valuable to me in my business, to me in my own personal growth. And, I think that's in long-windedness, that was why I started the podcast.
I love that. And then I know for me, it brings me a lot of energy. And so for you, like, how do you balance like hearing all of like here's like one of the things that I like will talk about with my friends about having a podcast is like I have so many people like that's honestly how I fast tracked my learning too is like having people on the podcast that are way smarter than me. So as someone that you're having these different guests on, how do you like steal ideas from people and also like make them your own?
Yeah, well, I think in this industry, we're all stealing ideas from each other.
Right.
Most of us are not reinventing the wheel here. And so I think the biggest thing is when you hear something that you like or that you're interested in, or you're like, hey, I think that's a good idea, figuring out like, okay, how can I implement this in a way that still is aligned with my
Right.
philosophies, my beliefs, my core values, the things that I want, my players to learn and take away from the time that they spend with me, not just on the court, but off the court. And I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest things for me is asking questions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. When I meet somebody that I find interesting or that I think, hey, they've got a lot of value I can learn from, asking questions and not being afraid to say, hey, I don't know, and I'm open to learning from you. Because at the end of the day, we all have different approaches and different styles and ways of being that we can take from other people, learn, grow, and apply. And so I think that that's the biggest thing for me is just being open, being curious. I think that you said it kind of a little bit ago of like the days that I think that like I'm, hot shit
Yeah, yeah.
are the days that I learned the least. And I
Right.
think being humble enough like to say, hey, I still know a lot of information, but I don't know everything.
Right.
And my way isn't the only way for
Correct.
people to succeed, get better, and develop. That is where like you open the door, right? That's your key to getting in.
Right.
And so if you're open to that, the opportunities of learning are endless for you. And at least for me, like I'm a lifelong learner.
Yes.
Like if I could be in school for the rest of my life, and I would do that. Like if somebody were saying, "Hey, I'd pay you to go to school forever," I'd probably do it because that's how important learning is to me. And I hope that I instill that in my players too, because I know that that's the key to everything is being open to learning.
1,000%. And every bad week I have, it's a week where like I neglected learning. Like I didn't read as much as I should have. I didn't listen to a podcast, right? Like I even had it 2 weeks ago and I told my kids, I'm like, I was, and I didn't know I could cuss, but I had a shitty week. I was a shitty leader. I was a shitty coach and I was a shitty fiance. And I told them that I'm like, I failed. And I need to be better. And because I hold myself up to like, and that's the other thing for those that are interested in getting into this business, you got to have high standards for yourself, like high standards for how you operate your business, high standards for how you coach. Like that's the only reason I've made it here. I didn't know anyone. So I had to separate. I didn't play college basketball. Like no one knew who I was. So I had to have an exceptional service and really get kids results if I wanted the word to actually spread.
Totally agree. I'm with you on that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. For those of you that are interested in getting to know you more, those are that interested in, getting to know your program more or potentially coming to your program or any of your trainings, can you share either your website or your Instagram or wherever people can best find you?
Yeah, for sure. I will reply to all DMs, BTG_basketball. I also have my personal accounts, Coach Furtado. Either Instagram accounts, I know it'll probably go in the requests. So if that doesn't end up going through, you can email me at coachfurtado@btgbasketball.org. Like you mentioned, I have a podcast, Beyond the Scoreboard, with Coach Furtado. So go check it out if you are looking for an additional podcast to Timeout. And yeah, no, I just really appreciate being on here and having this conversation. I always get more ideas from these conversations that I don't even know what to do with. So it's a good problem to have.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I'm always like, if I get an idea, I have notes like
Yep.
specific for that idea, and I write it down. And maybe there's not value to it that specific moment, but just having it down and being able to revisit and come back to it, you never know the purpose that can hold. So again, thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to more conversations.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.